Claire Segrin and Cal Hunter are a couple from Scotland who've been together for years. Claire had taken a break from medical school for a year, and during that time, the two of them decided to take a big step in life. Coming from middle-class backgrounds, they didn't have a lot of extra money lying around, so they started thinking of ways to earn a little more. After tossing around some ideas, they landed on one that felt exciting and possible. They would buy an old house, fix it up, and sell it for a profit. It sounded like a solid plan, but things didn't exactly go the way they imagined, and the twist would completely change their lives. As mentioned before, the couple lived in Scotland, though they weren't originally from there. They were looking to buy property somewhere up north. During their search, they came across an apartment in Glasgow that they were really interested in. It had been damaged in a fire a few years earlier, which meant it needed repairs, but that was part of the plan anyway. Cal went to the auction, feeling pretty confident. The place was full of bidders, but Cal jumped in and placed a bid of £30,000, which is around 37,000 US dollars. It was a serious amount of money, but he was sure he had a good shot. What he didn't realize, though, was that he had accidentally bid on the wrong property, and even more shocking, he actually won. It wasn't until a few minutes after placing the winning bid that Cal realized his mistake. He quickly went to the officials at the auction to explain what had happened. He hadn't meant to bid on that house at all. The place he just bought turned out to be a 120-year-old property in Dunoon, Scotland. According to Claire, the house was originally built in 1900 and had a lot of charm and history to it. It just had something special, she said. It felt like it would be wrong to tear it down and start over. So we made the big decision to try and save it. She was clearly excited. The couple already knew that any old house would need a lot of work, so they were prepared for a tough project. But they had hoped that the house they originally meant to buy would be a bit easier to manage. Instead, they ended up with a crumbling old mansion. Not exactly what they had in mind. Still, there was something about it that drew them in. It felt like it had a story to tell, and they couldn't wait to turn it into something beautiful. The price they paid was low for a house that size, so in a way it felt like a lucky break. But they were about to find out there was a lot more to this mansion than they first thought. It was only after seeing the house in person that they truly realized how much work it needed. Standing in front of it, they noticed something alarming. The entire place was slowly sinking into the ground. Parts of the roof were missing, and the local council had officially marked it as dangerous. Claire later shared that the house was in a partial state of collapse. It was unstable. There were huge holes in the roof and walls, the wood was rotting, and the land underneath was soaked. Calling it rundown didn't even come close. Even with all of that, they still felt hopeful. Claire explained, "Well, we just fell in love with the house and its beautiful setting in a village right by a Scottish loch. It really was a happy accident. If we can take this on, we can take on anything. It's going to take way more than a year, but think of everything we'll learn along the way." Friends and family weren't so sure, though. Many of them said the mansion was unlivable and didn't hold back their opinions. But Claire and Cal didn't let any of that shake their decision. Looking at the cracked walls and wrecked rooms did make them pause. But deep down, they believed the place had potential. They could see the house becoming something special. By now, they also understood the renovation would take a long time. That meant waiting longer to sell it, but they also believed that once it was finished, it would be worth a lot more. Then came another hard truth. The cost of fixing it up was going to be much higher than they first thought. They had to make a big decision. Renovating the house would eat up nearly everything they had, but they kept reminding themselves how valuable it could be in the end. To make it work, they needed to cut costs fast, starting with where they lived. So they decided to rent a small caravan and park it in the backyard. That's where they were going to live for the entire length of the project. It's worth mentioning that the caravan wasn't exactly comfortable. No electricity, no running water, not even basic plumbing. Still, They made the best of it. Even without the usual comforts, they were content. Claire and Cal saw it as a chance to add a bit of adventure to their lives, and that love for doing hard things together was one of the things that made them such a strong team. Claire, who's from Canada, and Cal, who's originally from England, first met during a ski season in the French Alps, and they clicked right away. By the end of that season, they knew they wanted to spend more time together. Since then, they've traveled all across Canada and Europe, always chasing adventure. But out of all the journeys they've taken, this one, restoring the mansion, is by far the biggest. Still, they felt confident they could do it, especially with support from friends, family, and the growing number of people cheering them on online. They started sharing their daily progress on a blog and across their social media pages under the name What Have We Do Noon, giving everyone a peek into what life looked like behind the scenes. To this day, they continue to post updates and photos of their work and life at the mansion. They also make it a point to celebrate even the smallest wins, like fixing a door or finishing a wall, just to keep the motivation going. Things were definitely moving slower than they hoped, but instead of letting it get them down, they focused on enjoying the process. One of their biggest strengths has been the people around them. Friends and family showed up in big ways to support them, especially when money got tight. Since hiring full-time contractors wasn't an option, they had to rely on others to pitch in where they could. And while they were determined, it became clear pretty quickly that this wasn't going to be a smooth ride. There wasn't a single day that went by without some sort of challenge popping up. For instance, their van got stuck in the muddy driveway, so they had to dig the whole thing up just to fix it, only to dig it up again later while searching for a water supply pipe. And it took them a full 5 months just to locate the main electrical cable for the house. Claire explained, "It's taken us this long to find the cable we need to connect the house to the mains. And just after laying down a driveway to stop the van getting stuck, we had to dig it up again to find the water pipe." These kinds of problems became almost routine, and really their struggle was just beginning. Just a quick look at the inside of the house was enough to tell them one big thing: the entire roof had to be replaced. Most of it was already falling apart. They started checking out prices for a new roof, but what they didn't realize right away was that a solid roof wouldn't matter much if the walls underneath weren't strong enough to hold it. So before they could even think about putting on a new roof, they'd have to repair the walls. "The house definitely needs a new roof," Claire explained, "but a civil engineer told us the walls probably can't support it yet. So now we've got to fix the walls first and risk the rain coming through the broken roof and damaging them again. It's like this huge, impossible puzzle." Thankfully, many of their online followers reached out to help. Some offered physical help, while others shared useful tips and advice. A few even helped them find materials. Since Claire and Cal wanted to keep the renovation eco-friendly, they appreciated people pointing them to places that sold secondhand or salvaged building supplies. It was little things like that that made the process feel more manageable. One of their early challenges was the massive amount of junk piled up all over the house. Broken furniture, old fittings. It was everywhere. Luckily, they had brought their truck with them, so they loaded up everything they could and made several trips to the nearest dumpster. Once they finally got the power connected, they turned their attention to the floors. Many of the floorboards were so rotten that leaving them as is would have been dangerous. Claire took the lead on pulling them out. Armed with a sledgehammer, she started knocking out the old boards, breaking them up piece by piece. Then there was the scaffolding, which wasn't in great shape either and needed to be checked. But there was one part of the house they both really loved: the big bay window on the top floor. It had a beautiful view and a lot of charm. Still, when they inspected it closely, they found cracks and holes all over the outside of it. At first, they blamed it on the way the house had started to sink, but it didn't take long before they realized something else was going on. They were just about at their breaking point when they discovered the roof timbers were actually pushing the window out of place. That moment brought another important lesson, the kind you don't think about when caught up in busy city life. It reminded them to slow down and get back to the basics. With no modern appliances like a washing machine or other electronics, and living out of a caravan, they had to come up with their own solutions. So they decided to go fully natural and make things work the old-fashioned way. Claire had a simple but smart idea for doing laundry. Instead of making the long trip into town to use a laundromat, she walked down to a nearby stream to wash their clothes by hand. Afterward, she hung them up to dry between a couple of trees. Living in a caravan definitely came with its own set of challenges, but that didn't mean it wasn't enjoyable. Sure, it wasn't as cozy or convenient as a house, but it gave them a kind of freedom they'd never experienced before. When summer rolled in, Claire and Cal wanted to enjoy every bit of it. Rather than ask neighbors for help, they decided to build their own little outdoor kitchen. They put together a stove, made some cupboards, and even added a bin. And surprisingly, it all worked great. No, it wasn't fancy or high-tech, but it was way more comfortable than what they had before and gave them a real sense of independence. Leaving the caravan parked out front wasn't a great option. It was right on the road, which meant that every time a car or truck passed by, the whole thing would shake. If one hit it, everything they owned could be ruined. On top of that, the traffic noise made it hard to sleep at night. So they decided to clear a path along the side of the mansion and move the caravan to a safer, quieter spot. After some effort, they managed to tow it to its new home. And honestly, it turned out to be a great move. In the mornings, instead of the noise of cars and trucks, they woke up to birds chirping and the soft sound of leaves moving in the breeze. No matter how tough things got, they stayed committed to their renovation dream. From clearing out cobweb-filled rooms to sleeping in a tiny caravan, nothing about this journey was easy, but they weren't backing down. The property had been sitting empty for nearly 20 years. In that time, it had become home to more than just dust and rot. A group of crows had taken up residence in the old mansion. They'd been nesting there for years. Claire didn't want to hurt them or destroy their home, but they did need to clear them out to move forward with the work. So, they came up with a gentle solution. They tried different ways to encourage the birds to leave, including building their own homemade scarecrow. Over time, they made a lot of progress, but it became clear they couldn't do it all alone. The renovation was just too big for two people. They knew exactly who could help, their friends back in the UK. So they reached out and asked if anyone was willing to lend a hand. Of course, offering to put friends up in a hotel wasn't realistic. It was way too expensive, and their small caravan had no space to squeeze anyone else in. With limited choices, they came up with a budget-friendly plan. They would build a little space for their friends to stay in the backyard. It was simple. They bought a decent-sized tent and set it up with beds and a few home comforts to make it feel welcoming. Meanwhile, the renovation continued. Even after everything they'd already done, they were only about halfway to their goal. Restoring a mansion is no small task, and it takes time. So how did they keep going without burning out? They made a list and committed to crossing off at least one task a day. That steady progress kept them moving forward, and the house was slowly starting to take on a new life. They've made it this far through hard work, sacrifices, and a whole lot of determination, both with money and their personal time. And all of it started with what looked like a simple mistake. But looking back now, was it really a mistake? Or was it the beginning of something they were always meant to do? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more real-life stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.